Hi, and welcome to the screencast for how do I use LoggerPro for video analysis. I'm going to show you the basics of using LoggerPro with video analysis. And yeah, so here I'm going to insert a movie. You should hopefully have your own movie. You could get a movie from any number of sources, like, I don't know, cell phone, digital camera. There's some criteria here for what the video needs to have in it. I'm going to show you an example first and then use that example to explain the criteria. So here is a shot of a video that would work. And here's the criteria. In order for the video to actually give us number data that's worth anything, you have to meet this criteria. The motion of the projectile must be moving perpendicular with respect to the camera's line of sight. Like in the basketball video, we're looking at it forward, but the basketball is moving from left to right and vertically as well, not getting closer to the camera, not getting farther from the camera. Secondly, the camera cannot move at all during the time you analyze the video. You could have some movement before the analysis or after, but during analysis you need to have a stationary camera. Finally, for these numbers to mean anything, you need to know the length of something in the video that is the same distance away from the camera as the projectile. And an option here would be to know the dimensions or the size of the projectile itself. That would be fine. As long as you've met this criteria, we should be fine for analysis. Again, that meets all the criteria. So what I'm going to do is find the first frame that I want to analyze. That's the projectile motion phase. So right when it comes out of this person's hand, the ball is now a projectile. The person's not influencing it anymore. It's just the earth influencing the object. So I'm going to do this analysis for a projectile. Over here, you'll see Enable and Disable Video Analysis. I'm going to start with that. And the first thing I'm going to do is set my origin. And you could set the origin anywhere you'd like. You can decide the ground is 0 height. You could decide something up here. I'm going to decide where the ball is 0 height. It really doesn't matter. The direction that this little ball is pointing tells me the positive X direction. I can rotate it and make changes if I want, but you don't have to. When you click, you get the standard to the right is positive and up is positive. So as it is right now, where the ball is right now is defined as 0 position X and Y, with to the right being positive X and up being positive Y. I also need to set the scale. So I'm going to select something of known length. And I know the people that made this video used a 2-meter stick or 2-meter sticks end to end. And so I have a sense of scale now. If I knew the dimensions of the ball, that also would have worked. I'm going to hide the origin and I'm going to hide the scale because I don't need to see it. My next step is going to be adding points. But before I add points, I'm going to come down here and sync the graph. Right when the ball comes out of the person's hands, that's when I'm going to start analyzing this. So I'm going to set that time to be 0 seconds on the graph. So the graph time is 0 seconds, although the movie time is not 0. Now I'm ready to add points. So I click on Add Point, and it gives me these little crosshairs. And wherever I click, we're going to add a data point. So I click once, and the video self-advances 1 frame. That's the default setting. And I'm going to do my best to always click in exactly the same part of the basketball. The better I can do this step, the better the quantitative data will be later. So I'm taking my time, trying not to be impatient. With your video, you'll notice the basketball is pretty easy for me to click on. It's a large object and it's not moving that quickly. If you happen to videotape something that is smaller and moving fast, it's going to get blurry and very difficult to do. So you might consider that before getting your video. All right, I want to show you something else. I'm going to click Select Point and double click in the graph. And that brings up some movie options. There's all kinds of different options here. What I'm going to look at right now is advance the movie. Instead of 1 frame each time, I'm going to speed this up a little bit, say 3 frames. I've got more than enough frames to use here. So from here on out, I'm going to do multiple frames per click. Another thing that makes this a good quality video for analysis is the fact that the object and the background don't blend in together. So it makes it easy for me to see the basketball at all times. All right, so that's all the data I have. I'm going to select point just so I don't click anywhere and goof stuff up. But I have, you see the trajectory of the ball, you see it bouncing. I have graphs that have automatically been created. A position versus time graph for the X direction here in red. See, that's the location of the bounce. And I have a position versus time graph for the Y direction in blue. Again, you can identify the free fall phase and then a bounce and another free fall phase. And that's kind of nice. I can insert more graphs. Like this automatically gives me a Y velocity, which shows me the behavior of the ball and then a bounce and behavior of the ball again. Or I could do this as an X velocity. Or if I click more, I can see both. I'm going to auto arrange, and that's going to make it so this window is a little more useful. I can see the video and the trajectory. I can see the data table, and I can see position versus time and velocity versus time graphs. My next step in data analysis would actually be to do some curve fitting. So I can select my data. I'm going to select a range that is clearly in that first phase and curve fit, and it asks me whether I want to analyze the X or the Y. I'm going to do X first. That appears linear, so I can do a linear fit. Try it. It gives me a line of best fit. The correlation is really good. So I have information on the X direction. It had a constant positive velocity of 3.012, give or take this small amount. The intercept was very close to 0 because I set it at the origin of measurement. It's highly correlated, very little error. I can do the same process for the Y direction. But this is clearly not linear. That appears to be quadratic. And I can try the fit, and the fit looks really good. Very low error. And I get the fit for that section. I could, if I wanted, do this section also, which would be for the X direction after the bounce and the Y direction after the bounce. Now, you don't have to do that, and clearly this is getting pretty cluttered. It's hard to keep track of everything. But if you wanted, you could have all that analysis. Selecting on the velocity versus time graph, clearly before the bounce, here it gets a little bit questionable, but clearly before the bounce, I can do the same thing. These are both supposed to be linear, indicating constant velocity for the X direction and constantly changing velocity for the Y direction, or constant acceleration. So there's my X direction The slope is approximately 0, indicating constant horizontal velocity. And for the y direction, I can do that also. Notice the slope on the y direction is negative 9.702, give or take this stuff, give or take 0.1. Negative 9.8 is within that range, and that's what we would expect. That would be our free fall acceleration. I have an intercept of 4.41 meters per second, give or take this amount. That's actually going to be related to something up here also, if you know what you're looking for. And if I wanted, I could solve for these, do these fits as well, but that's just getting a little bit too crowded. Well, that's it. That's it for doing motion capture or video analysis in LoggerPro. But there's one thing I left out, and that's what happens if your video doesn't open at all. Like, it worked out great for me. I have this very nicely dressed man throwing a basketball across, and it worked fine. But you maybe collected a video, and when you opened it up, it was just a black screen or just a white screen and nothing happened. Now, in order to do this, your video needs to be QuickTime compatible. So what you might do is go to onlineconvert.com or a different site. There's several of them. You want an MOV that should work. It's a QuickTime compatible format. And you can upload your file or a URL if it's a website. And it should give you the quality, and it should be a brain fart. Compatible. It should be a compatible file format, so you don't end up with the black screen or the white screen. You should be able to see the video. All right, that's it. I think that'll do. Except, wait, there's one more thing. For my classes, you're probably going to have to explain this, not just give me a picture, but explain it. So you could insert text. You'll probably be writing all kinds of explanation in here. You could auto arrange again and type your stuff in here. The video is not all that important. You could make the video much smaller. The data table, don't know that you need it. I'll go ahead and auto arrange again after I make this bigger. Now I have some more room to work with. Arg, that'll work. Got my graphs. I have room to explain. I have my video. Okay, now I'm finished.